We woke up early in the morning, roused by the sound of my own alarm clock and the bright sunlight peeking through the blinds. Today was a special day. My wife April was flying to India for 2 weeks, to a resort she had won at work as a bonus for her excellent sales performance. I stretched, yawned sweetly, and turned to April. She was already awake, lying on her back and staring dreamily at the ceiling. Feeling my movement, she turned her head and gave me a sleepy smile. "Good morning, sleepyhead," she murmured, reaching for a kiss. "Morning," I replied, readily kissing her back. "So, are you ready for the big adventure?" "You bet!" exclaimed April, sitting up in bed. Her eyes were burning with anticipation. "I've been dreaming of visiting India for so long. Ancient temples, sacred rivers, exotic cuisine. I want to see and try it all." I shook my head with a smile, admiring my wife's enthusiasm. In the 5 years of our marriage, I had gotten used to her thirst for new experiences and adventures. Sometimes I even had the thought that our measured family life here in Springfield, Missouri had become a little boring for her. But I dismissed these doubts. April always said that she loved me more than anything in the world. After breakfast, we loaded April's suitcases into the car and drove to the airport. All the way, my wife chattered about what she planned to do in India: visit the beaches of Goa, participate in the colorful Holi festival, see the mountain peaks of the Himalayas. I listened to her, smiling and interjecting at the right moments. Although deep down I was a little envious. I had 2 weeks of routine office work ahead of me, while my better half would be enjoying all the beauties of Hindustan. At the airport, at the check-in counter, we hugged tightly and kissed goodbye. "I'm going to miss you so much, love," I whispered, inhaling the familiar scent of her hair. "Please be careful and don't forget to call me, okay?" "Of course, honey." April pecked me on the cheek and winked playfully. "Don't worry about me. Just keep an eye on the house and don't forget to water my plants." We hugged once more, and April, picking up her carry-on, disappeared behind the doors leading to the boarding area. And I, watching her go, suddenly felt a strange pang of unease, as if this parting was something more than just a short separation. But I shrugged off this silly premonition. After all, what bad could happen in just 2 weeks? 2 weeks flew by almost unnoticed for me. The first few days after April's departure, I missed her terribly. But then, work and household chores pulled me into their whirlpool. We often called each other in the evenings, and April, bubbling with delight, would tell me about the colorful Indian bazaars, ancient temples, and wonderful healing treatments she was getting at the hotel's spa. I was happy to hear the genuine joy in her voice and looked forward to her return. And finally, the day came when I was meeting April at the airport again. At first, everything went as usual: hugs, kisses, stories about the flight. But already in the car on the way home, I noticed that my wife had become somewhat subdued and seemed to avoid meeting my eyes. She answered my questions in monosyllables and inappropriately, and sometimes she would even sink into thoughtful silence, gazing at the landscapes outside the window. I attributed her strange behavior to fatigue after a long journey, but the anxious foreboding that had arisen in my soul back then, at the airport 2 weeks ago, made its voice heard again. At home, while April was taking a shower, I habitually opened her email on our home computer to check if any utility bills had arrived. What I saw made me go cold. The inbox was full of emails from an address I didn't recognize, signed with the name Ravi. Unable to resist my curiosity, I clicked on one of them at random. "My dear April, I can't stop thinking about the magical night we spent together under the stars of Goa. Your kisses were sweeter than mangoes, and your skin was softer than jasmine petals. I don't know how to go on living, knowing that you've left and may never return. I beg you, answer me, my love. Yours forever, Ravi." My heart started pounding like crazy, and I felt nauseous. With a trembling hand, I closed the email and leaned back in my chair, feeling the room swim before my eyes. This couldn't be happening. Not my April, not my beloved wife, who had sworn eternal love and fidelity to me. Surely this was some kind of mistake, a misunderstanding. At that moment, April emerged from the shower, wrapped in a towel and with her hair still damp. Seeing me at the computer, she suddenly froze and flushed deeply. "Henry, I can explain," she stammered, nervously crumpling the edge of the towel. "Explain what?" I hissed through clenched teeth, feeling a wave of anger and resentment washing over me. How you were having fun with some resort gigolo while I was going crazy with worry here." April burst into tears and sank down on the edge of the bed. Through sobs and tears, she confessed to me that she had indeed started an affair with Ravi, a local yoga instructor she had met on the beach. She swore that she had succumbed to a moment of weakness, that nothing like that would ever happen again, begged me to forgive her. But I was no longer listening to her words. There was a ringing in my ears, and everything was swimming before my eyes from the tears that were welling up. Grabbing the car keys, I ran out of the house, slamming the door. I needed to be alone and think hard about how to live on after such a betrayal. The next few days passed as if in a fog. I barely spoke to April, and she walked around the house pale and tearful, glancing at me guiltily now and then. I understood that we needed to have a serious talk and decide what to do next. But every time I tried to start a conversation, my throat was constricted with a lump of resentment and anger. Finally, one evening, as we were both sitting in the kitchen over a cold dinner, April said softly, "Henry, we need to get a divorce." I looked up at her in amazement. Of course, our marriage was falling apart at the seams, but I never thought she would take such a step. "Look, I know I've hurt you badly," April continued, looking down at her hands. "But what happened in India? It's not just a holiday romance. I've fallen in love with Ravi for real, and he loves me. We want to be together." Everything went dark before my eyes. So while I was here suffering and trying to figure out how to save our marriage, my unfaithful wife was already making plans for a future together with her lover. "Well, if that's what you want, go ahead," I hissed through gritted teeth. "File for divorce. I hope you'll be happy with your Indian yogi." The next day, April moved out, taking her things, and a month later, we were officially divorced. I tried to hold it together, buried myself in work, hung out with friends. But in the evenings, left alone with myself in the empty house, I couldn't hold back my tears. 7 years of marriage, 7 years of love and trust, and it was all crossed out by one unfaithful decision. Meanwhile, April, judging by her social media posts, was reveling in her new happiness. All her photos were with Ravi. Here they were hugging against the backdrop of the Taj Mahal. Here they were kissing in some luxurious restaurant. Here they were cuddling on the beach. "We are happier than ever," read the captions under the pictures. Every time I saw them, I gritted my teeth and slammed the laptop shut. It was painful and insulting to me that April had found consolation so quickly while I was suffering from a broken heart. 6 months had passed since our divorce. Gradually, the pain of April's betrayal had dulled, replaced by a dull resentment and disappointment. I learned to live anew, alone, finding joy in small everyday things. A morning run in the park, a delicious coffee, an interesting book. Our mutual acquaintances, who continued to communicate with April, told me that she was still happy in her new relationship and was thinking about moving to India to be with Ravi. But one evening, I received a phone call that completely changed the situation. My old friend Kate, who was also friends with April, told me the news in an agitated voice. "Henry, are you sitting down? Ravi dumped April and took off to India." "What?" I almost choked in surprise. "How? When?" "Last week," Kate rattled on. "April told me herself. Can you imagine? She came to his house and he had already left, leaving a note saying he was going back to his homeland, to his wife and kids. Turns out he had a whole family there, and April was just like a side fling. What a jerk, huh?" I listened in shock, not knowing what to think. On the one hand, I was even a little pleased that karma had caught up with my unfaithful wife, and she got what she deserved. On the other hand, I understood how she must be feeling now, abandoned and alone. No matter what, we had spent 7 happy years together, and I still had warm feelings for her, despite the hurt. But the real shock was yet to come. A couple of days later, I ran into our mutual acquaintance Susan at the store. While we were exchanging the usual pleasantries, she suddenly lowered her voice and asked, "Hey, Henry, have you heard about April yet? You know that Ravi dumped her?" "Yeah, Kate told me." I nodded. "It's sad, of course, but she chose that fate herself." "That's not all." Susan looked around and whispered, "I heard that he also left her a parting gift, a bouquet of venereal diseases that will now take a long and tedious time to treat." What a jerk, huh? Poor April. How could she get involved with a guy like that? I felt the ground slipping from under my feet. Not only had this scoundrel dumped my ex, breaking her heart, he had also ruined her health. I'm ashamed to admit it, but at that moment, I felt a grim satisfaction. That's what you get, you cheater. If you hadn't run off with the first guy you met, you might not have had these problems. Thanking Susan for the information, I hurried home. I needed to think about what I had heard and decide how to react. Should I call April, express my sympathy, offer help? Or is it better to stay away from this story and its consequences? After all, April had chosen this path herself. A couple of weeks after my conversation with Susan, April called me. Her voice sounded depressed and pitiful. "Hey, Henry, listen, I've been thinking. Maybe we could meet up, talk? I'm having such a hard time right now. I really need support." I chuckled to myself. So when Madam had love and romance, she didn't think about me at all. But as soon as she got in trouble, suddenly it's, "Let's talk." Oh no, honey. I'm not going to lend you my shoulder and wipe your nose anymore. "I'm sorry, April, but I don't think that's a good idea," I replied, trying to keep my voice even and calm. Our story is over, and I don't see any point in continuing it, even as friends. There was silence on the line. Then April sighed and said, "Henry, please. I know I've hurt you badly, but I'm really feeling awful. I'm all alone, and then there are these health problems after Ravi. Please don't abandon me." I have to admit, for a second I even felt sorry for her, but I reminded myself how she had abandoned me and broken my heart. No, enough is enough. It seems it's time for April to experience the same thing I went through. "You know, I just remembered an Indian proverb," I drawled, smirking. "Karma, she's such a bitch. She always comes back and bites you in the ass." It looks like, honey, this is exactly your case. You ruined our marriage, broke my heart, and well, there you go. Get it and sign for it. Figure it out yourself and don't drag me into it. And without waiting for her response, I hung up. It was probably cruel of me, but damn, it felt so good to realize that I was no longer a doormat for this woman to wipe her feet on. I had suffered enough while she was having fun. I've had enough. Of course, I felt a little awkward about my own vindictiveness, but after all, I had a right to it. Let April deal with the consequences of her betrayal on her own, and I will move on with my life. And hope that someday I will meet a woman who will value and respect me, who won't break my heart in pursuit of a cheap fling. But for now, I just want to enjoy my new, free life, without lies, pain, and resentment.